The black single dad was just trying to give his little daughter a normal life. That afternoon, everything seemed ordinary, until a luxury Rolls-Royce slowly pulled up outside their home. Daniel watched as a beautiful woman stepped out. She didn't look around. She didn't ask for directions. She walked straight toward him, as if she already knew exactly who he was. Daniel had never seen her before. But somehow, she knew his name.
And when she finally stood in front of
him, she made an offer that could change his life forever.
Marry me.
Please marry me, and I'll give you $10 million. The little girl was asleep when Daniel finally turned off the kitchen light. He stood in the doorway for a few seconds, watching her chest rise and fall beneath the thin blanket. Maya was 8 years old, but sometimes Daniel still saw the tiny baby he had once carried through the hospital corridors at 3 in the morning. He smiled faintly. "Good night, princess." Maya stirred but didn't wake. Daniel quietly closed the door. His apartment was small. 2 bedrooms, an old sofa, a kitchen with a refrigerator that made strange noises at night, and a tiny balcony where he sometimes stood after work just to breathe. It wasn't much. But it was home. And for Daniel, home had never been about how much money was in the bank. It was about one little girl calling him Dad. At 29, Daniel had already learned that life could change without asking permission. 5 years earlier, he had been working 2 jobs, studying part-time, and planning a future with Maya's mother. Then one afternoon, everything changed. She left. No dramatic argument. No warning. She simply decided that motherhood was not the life she wanted. Daniel could still remember the day she placed the baby in his arms and said she couldn't do it. He had been terrified. He had no idea how to raise a child. He didn't know how to braid hair. He didn't know which medicine to give when Maya had a fever. He didn't know how to make pancakes without burning them. But he knew one thing. He wasn't leaving his daughter. So he learned. He learned how to cook. He learned how to fix broken toys. He learned how to tie ribbons into Maya's hair, even though his first attempts looked like someone had fought a lawnmower. He learned how to work long hours and still make it home before bedtime. And somehow, 5 years later, he had built a quiet little life around her. It wasn't rich. But it was honest. The next morning, Daniel woke to the sound of tiny footsteps running across the hallway. "Daddy." He barely had time to sit up before Maya jumped onto the bed. "Wake up." Daniel groaned dramatically. "Why?" "Because you're late." He opened one eye. "For what?" "Breakfast." He stared at her. "You're telling me I'm late for my own breakfast?" "Yes." "That's serious." Maya nodded firmly. "Very serious." Daniel laughed. "All right, boss." 20 minutes later, they were sitting at the kitchen table eating pancakes. Maya studied him carefully. "Daddy?" "Are we rich?" Daniel almost choked on his coffee. "What made you ask that?" "Sarah said her daddy is rich because he has 2 cars." Daniel looked toward the window. Their neighbor's expensive SUV was parked outside. He looked back at Maya. "Well." He leaned closer. "We have something better." "What?" Daniel smiled. "We have each other." Maya rolled her eyes. "That's not money." "No. But it's still better." She smiled. "Okay." Daniel reached across the table and squeezed her hand. That was the moment he decided something. He would give her a better life. Not because she was unhappy. But because she deserved every opportunity he could possibly give her. He just didn't know that someone else had already decided to change their lives. Across the city, inside a mansion surrounded by tall iron gates, Victoria Laurent sat alone at the end of an enormous dining table. She was 31 years old. Beautiful. Elegant. Powerful. And desperately lonely. Her name appeared in business magazines almost every month. She owned technology companies, luxury properties, investment firms, and a chain of hotels. Her net worth was estimated in the hundreds of millions. People assumed she had everything. They were wrong. Victoria stared at the untouched breakfast in front of her. Across from her sat an older man in a dark suit. His name was Mr. Harrison. He had been her family's attorney for almost 20 years. "There is still time," he said quietly. Victoria didn't look up. "There isn't." "There is." She finally raised her eyes. "You know the condition." Mr. Harrison sighed. He knew exactly what she meant. Victoria's father had left her a fortune, but his will contained one unusual condition. If she wanted to retain control of the family foundation and certain major assets, she needed to be legally married before her 32nd birthday. At first, Victoria had laughed when she read it. She had thought it was ridiculous. Then she discovered the second condition. Her future husband had to sign a prenuptial agreement proving that he had no claim to the family fortune. Her father had been terrified that someone would marry his daughter for money. So he had created a strange solution. Unfortunately, Victoria's birthday was only 6 weeks away. "I don't want a fake husband," she said. Mr. Harrison looked at her. "Then find a real one." Victoria gave him a tired smile. "Where? You've dated plenty of men." "Exactly." She stood and walked toward the window. "I dated men who knew my net worth before they knew my favorite food." She folded her arms. "One man proposed after 3 months. Perhaps he loved you. He loved the lifestyle." Mr. Harrison said nothing. Victoria looked outside at the fountain. "I don't want someone impressed by me." "What do you want?" She was silent for several seconds. Then she answered. "Someone who doesn't need me." That sentence stayed in the room. Mr. Harrison slowly opened a folder. "Then I may have found someone." Victoria turned. "What?" He placed several photographs on the table. Victoria walked over. The first photograph showed a young man standing outside a modest apartment building. The second showed him walking beside a little girl. The third showed him carrying groceries. The fourth showed him kneeling beside an elderly woman's broken car. Victoria studied the photographs. "Who is he?" "Daniel Carter." "What does he do?" "Runs a small auto repair business." Victoria looked at the photograph again. "He doesn't look like someone who would agree to marry a billionaire." "That's precisely why I found him interesting." She raised an eyebrow. Mr. Harrison continued. "He's been approached by wealthy customers before. He refuses gifts when he thinks they are excessive." Victoria looked at another photograph. Daniel was sitting beside his daughter on a park bench. "He has a child." "Yes." "His daughter?" "Yes. Maya. 8 years old." Victoria's expression softened. "Where is the mother?" "Not involved." Victoria slowly closed the folder. "Why him?" Mr. Harrison hesitated. "Because 3 months ago, one of our foundation's vehicles broke down near his garage." Victoria frowned. "He repaired it?" "He did." "And?" "He refused payment." "Why?" "He discovered the driver was taking his elderly mother to the hospital." Victoria stared at him. "He gave them the repair for free." "Yes." "Did he know who they were?" "No." Victoria looked back at the photograph. For the first time that morning, something resembling hope appeared in her eyes. "Set up a meeting." Mr. Harrison nodded. "Business meeting?" Victoria picked up the photograph of Daniel and his daughter. "No." She looked at Daniel's face. "Something much more personal." 2 days later, Daniel was working underneath an old pickup truck when his phone rang. He wiped his hands on a rag and answered. "Hello. Mr. Carter?" "Yes. My name is Harrison. I'm calling on behalf of Ms. Victoria Laurent." Daniel frowned. "The Victoria Laurent?" "Yes." He sat up beneath the vehicle. "The billionaire?" There was a brief pause. "Yes." Daniel looked around the garage. "Why is she calling me?" "She would like to meet you." Daniel laughed nervously. "Did I repair one of her cars?" "No." "Did I damage one?" "No." "Then I have no idea why she wants to meet me." Mr. Harrison gave him an address. "Please come tomorrow at 7. Daniel almost refused. Then he heard Maya's voice in the background. Daddy. He smiled. All right. I'll come. The next evening, Daniel arrived at the address. He almost drove past it. The property was enormous. A massive iron gate opened before him. Beyond it stood a mansion that looked like something from a movie. Daniel parked his old sedan beside a line of luxury vehicles. He stepped out wearing a simple dark polo shirt and clean jeans. He looked down at himself. Then at the mansion. Great, he muttered. What am I doing here? The front door opened. Victoria stepped outside. She wasn't wearing diamonds or an extravagant gown. Instead, she wore a simple cream-colored dress. She walked toward him. Daniel? He nodded. Victoria? She smiled. Yes. They shook hands. Daniel immediately noticed something strange. She wasn't looking at him like a wealthy woman looking at a stranger. She was looking at him like someone who had already made a decision. Thank you for coming. I almost didn't. She laughed softly. I understand. They walked inside. Daniel looked around. Everything was beautiful. But something about the house felt empty. Too large. Too quiet. They sat across from each other in a private sitting room. Victoria poured him water. Daniel glanced at the glass. You don't have anything stronger? She laughed. No. Good. He smiled. The tension eased slightly. Then Victoria placed a black leather folder on the table. Daniel's smile disappeared. What's that? A proposal. For my business? No. Then what? Victoria looked directly into his eyes. I want you to marry me. Daniel stared at her. He waited for the punchline. It didn't come. He looked behind her. Then back at her. Excuse me. I want you to marry me. Daniel slowly stood. Ms. Laurent, I think you've made a mistake. I haven't. You don't know me. I know enough. You don't even know what kind of person I am. I know. Then why me? Victoria opened the folder. Inside was a contract. Daniel looked down. His eyes moved across the first page. Then stopped. His mouth opened slightly. $10 million. Victoria nodded. For marrying me. Daniel looked at her in disbelief. You're offering me $10 million to become your husband? Yes. He laughed once. Not because it was funny. Because the situation was impossible to understand. Why? Victoria's expression changed. For the first time, the confidence disappeared. I need a husband before my birthday. Daniel stared at her. And you picked me? Yes. Why? She hesitated. Because I need someone I can trust. Daniel shook his head. You don't know me. I know more than you think. His expression hardened. What does that mean? Victoria leaned forward. I know you have an 8-year-old daughter. Daniel immediately became protective. How do you know about my daughter? I had you investigated. He stood. Then this conversation is over. Daniel, wait. No. He grabbed his jacket. You can offer me $100 million. My daughter isn't part of any deal. Victoria stood as well. I would never ask you to give up your daughter. Daniel stopped. She continued quietly. I don't want to take her from you. Then what do you want? Victoria looked at him. I want to give both of you something. Daniel's anger softened slightly. What? A home. She walked toward the window. Security. Stability. And a family. Daniel stared at her. You don't even know if I want to marry you. I know. Then why are you so certain? Victoria turned around. Because I don't need you to love me yet. She took a breath. I only need you to give me a chance. Daniel looked down at the contract again. $10 million. A mansion. Security for Maya. Everything he had spent years struggling to provide. All sitting on a table in front of him. But there was something about Victoria's eyes that bothered him. She wasn't behaving like someone buying a husband. She looked like someone desperately trying to save something. Daniel slowly closed the folder. I need time. Victoria nodded. How much? Until tomorrow. Take 3 days. Daniel looked surprised. Then she said something that made him stop completely. Because there's something I haven't told you yet. He turned. What? Victoria looked toward the floor. My father didn't just leave me an inheritance. She swallowed. He left me a deadline. Daniel waited. And if I don't marry before that deadline? She looked back at him. I lose almost everything. Daniel's eyes narrowed. Everything. Everything my family built. And that's why you need a husband. Yes. He nodded slowly. Now the offer made sense. But before Daniel could respond, Victoria added quietly. There's one more reason I chose you. Daniel waited. Victoria looked toward him with an expression he couldn't read. I've seen the way you look at your daughter. She paused. And I realized something. What? She smiled sadly. I don't want a husband because I'm afraid of losing my money. I want a husband because I'm afraid of spending the rest of my life surrounded by everything. Her voice trembled. Except the people I love. Daniel said nothing. For several seconds, they simply looked at each other. Then he picked up his jacket. I'll give you my answer tomorrow. Victoria nodded. As Daniel walked toward the door, she called his name. He turned. Daniel? Yes. Don't say yes because of the 10 million. He looked at her. And don't say no because you're afraid of me. Daniel gave her a faint smile. I'll try to make my decision for the right reason. He walked out. Victoria watched him leave through the window. Outside, Daniel got into his old sedan. He sat behind the steering wheel but didn't start the engine. He looked at the mansion. Then at the contract sitting beside him. $10 million. A marriage proposal from a billionaire. A future he had never imagined. Then his phone buzzed. It was a message from Maya. Daddy, are you coming home soon? I miss you. Red heart. Daniel stared at the message. His eyes softened. He started the engine. But as he drove away, he had no idea that the real reason Victoria had chosen him had nothing to do with the inheritance. And the following morning, when Daniel discovered what she had been hiding, the decision would become far more complicated than money. The next morning, Daniel woke before his alarm. He had barely slept. The contract sat on the small table beside his bed. $10 million. He had stared at those words so many times that they no longer looked real. For most of his life, Daniel had worried about ordinary things. Rent. School fees. Groceries. Maya's clothes. The garage. The next repair that might bring in enough money to keep everything moving. Now, someone had placed $10 million within reach of him. All he had to do was marry her. But every time he imagined signing that contract, he saw Maya's face. He didn't want his daughter growing up believing that marriage was something people bought. Daniel finally picked up the phone and called Victoria. She answered almost immediately. Daniel? I need to talk to you. Of course. I'll come over. An hour later, Daniel was sitting across from her again. This time, Victoria looked different. She seemed nervous. Daniel placed the contract on the table. I need you to tell me everything. Victoria looked at him. Everything? Everything you didn't tell me yesterday. She slowly nodded. Fair enough. She walked toward a cabinet and removed an old envelope. She placed it on the table. This belonged to my father. Daniel watched as she opened it. Inside was an old photograph. Victoria turned it around. Daniel looked at it. Then his expression changed. The photograph showed two men standing beside an old automobile. One of them was Victoria's father. The other was a man Daniel immediately recognized. His own father. Daniel picked up the photograph with trembling fingers. Where did you get this? My father kept it. Why? Victoria sat down. Our fathers were friends. Daniel stared at her. You're serious? Very. She explained that years earlier, before Victoria's family became wealthy, her father had struggled to keep his first business alive. Daniel's father had helped him. Not with money. With work. With honesty. With a chance. When Victoria's father eventually became successful, he never forgot the man who had helped him when nobody else would. He tried to find your father again, Victoria said. But by the time he did, your father had already passed away. Daniel lowered his eyes. His father had never mentioned any of this. Then why did you choose me? Victoria's voice softened. Because my father told me something before he died. She paused. He said if I ever needed to know whether someone was genuinely good, I should look for the kind of person who helps others when nobody is watching. Daniel looked at the photograph. That's why you investigated me? Yes. Victoria took a breath. But there was another reason. Daniel looked at her. What? My father had met you once. Daniel frowned. I don't remember. You were young. She smiled faintly. He saw you helping your father repair a car. Daniel's eyes widened. You. My father told me about you. She touched the photograph. He said you were the kind of boy who watched everything your father did. Daniel swallowed. He said you would become a good man. Silence filled the room. Daniel looked away. For the first time since meeting Victoria, he didn't know what to say. Then he remembered the words his father had repeated throughout his childhood. Money comes and goes. But your name stays with you forever. He looked back at Victoria. So your father wanted you to marry me? No. She shook her head. My father never knew you would be the person I chose. Then why the deadline? Victoria sighed. Because after he died, my relatives began fighting over the company. The trust requires me to be married before my 32nd birthday, otherwise control passes to a board chosen by people who don't care about what my father built. Daniel nodded slowly. And you think marrying me solves everything? It does legally. But not emotionally. Victoria smiled sadly. That's why I made the offer. Daniel looked at her. 10 million. I thought it would give you a reason to take me seriously. It made me think you were trying to buy me. I know. She lowered her eyes. I was wrong. Daniel sat quietly. Then Victoria said something unexpected. You don't have to take the 10 million. He looked up. What? You heard me. She pushed the contract toward him. You don't have to accept the money. Daniel stared at her. Then why offer it? Because I wanted you to know that I would never expect you to sacrifice your life for mine without giving you something in return. She paused. But if you marry me, I want it to be because we both choose it. Daniel leaned back. You realize this is insane, right? Victoria laughed. For the first time, we agree. He smiled. It was the first genuine smile between them. Over the next few days, they met again. But something changed. There was no longer a billionaire interviewing a potential husband. There was simply Victoria and Daniel. Two people trying to understand each other. Daniel brought Maya with him one afternoon. Victoria had prepared an enormous welcome. But Maya wasn't impressed by the mansion. She walked through the living room, looked at the grand piano, then pointed toward the kitchen. Do you have cookies? Victoria blinked. Then laughed. I can arrange that. Maya smiled. Good. Daniel shook his head. Sorry. Victoria smiled. Don't apologize. Within 20 minutes, Maya and Victoria were in the kitchen making cookies. Daniel stood in the doorway watching them. Something inside him shifted. He had expected Victoria to be uncomfortable around his daughter. Instead, she listened to Maya's stories. She laughed at her jokes. She let Maya decorate the cookies. And when Maya accidentally spilled flour across the kitchen counter, Victoria simply laughed. Daniel had not seen his daughter that happy in a long time. That evening, Maya whispered something to him while Victoria was outside. "Daddy?" "Yes. I like her." Daniel smiled. "You've known her for one day." Maya shrugged. "Still." Daniel laughed. "Go brush your teeth." As the weeks passed, Victoria became part of their lives. She attended Maya's school event. She watched Daniel work at the garage. She sat on an old plastic chair while he repaired a customer's car. She even tried to help him once. Daniel handed her a wrench. "Turn that." Victoria tried. Nothing happened. She tried again. Still nothing. Daniel smiled. "You're turning it the wrong way." "I knew that." "You absolutely did not." She laughed. For someone who owned companies worth hundreds of millions, Victoria had never looked happier than she did standing in a greasy garage with her hair tied back. Daniel began realizing something dangerous. He was falling for her. Not because she was beautiful. Although she was. Not because she was rich. He had stopped caring about that. He was falling because she remembered the little things. How Maya liked her pancakes. How Daniel took his coffee. How he always called his daughter before leaving work. She didn't just want to be part of his life. She paid attention to it. And Victoria was changing too. The woman who had once eaten alone at a dining table built for 12 people now looked forward to crowded dinners with Daniel and Maya. She started laughing more. She stopped checking her phone during meals. She began sleeping peacefully. Then, one evening, everything nearly fell apart. Daniel returned to the mansion and found Victoria sitting alone in the study. There were tears in her eyes. "What happened?" She handed him a document. "My lawyers." Daniel read it. The wedding deadline had been moved forward. 2 weeks. Victoria's birthday was approaching. "If we don't marry by then, I lose control of the company." Daniel looked at her. "Then we'll do it." Victoria's eyes widened. "Daniel." He took her hand. "I'm not doing it for the money." "I know." "I'm not doing it because I feel sorry for you." "I know." He smiled. "I'm doing it because somewhere along the way, this stopped being a deal." Victoria's lips trembled. "What is it now?" Daniel looked into her eyes. "A choice." She started crying. Daniel gently wiped a tear from her cheek. "I love you." Victoria closed her eyes. For a moment, she couldn't speak. Then she whispered, "I love you too." They kissed. Not like two strangers completing a contract. Not like a billionaire and a mechanic. Like two people who had somehow found each other when neither was looking. They married 3 weeks later. There was no enormous celebrity wedding. No parade. Just family, close friends, and Maya standing between them as they exchanged their vows. When it was time for Daniel to sign the final legal documents, Victoria placed the original $10 million check beside him. He looked at it. Then he pushed it away. "I don't want it." Victoria smiled. "You don't have to." Daniel looked at her. "Actually." He paused. "I do want something." "What?" He pointed toward Maya. "I want to build her a future." Victoria smiled. "Then let's build it together." And they did. Daniel expanded his garage. Victoria funded a vocational training center for young mechanics and technicians. They created scholarships for single parents who wanted to learn skilled trades. But Daniel kept one thing exactly the same. He still worked with his hands. He still repaired cars. He still walked into his garage every morning wearing a simple shirt. And sometimes Victoria would arrive in her Rolls-Royce, step out in an elegant dress, and sit beside him while he worked. The workers eventually got used to it. Maya grew up surrounded by both of them. And one evening, years after their first meeting, Daniel stood on the balcony of their home watching Victoria and Maya laughing together in the garden. Victoria walked toward him. "You know something?" "What?" She smiled. When I first offered you $10 million, I thought I was buying myself a husband. Daniel laughed. And instead, she wrapped her arms around him. I accidentally found my family. Daniel kissed her forehead. You didn't buy me. No. No. He looked at her. You gave me a choice. Victoria smiled. And you chose me. Daniel looked toward the garden. Maya was running through the grass, laughing. Best decision I ever made. Victoria rested her head against his shoulder. For years, people would talk about the billionaire who offered a single father $10 million to marry her. They would talk about the mansion. The Rolls-Royce. The fortune. The unbelievable proposal. But they would never understand the most important part. Daniel didn't marry Victoria because she was rich. Victoria didn't marry Daniel because she needed a husband. They married because somewhere between the contract, the awkward first meetings, the laughter in the kitchen, the garage filled with grease, and the little girl who simply wanted cookies, a transaction became trust. Trust became friendship. Friendship became love. And love became a family. The $10 million had brought them to the same table. But it was love that made them stay.